The rain fell in slow, heavy drops the morning the single father buried his own father, each drop striking the black umbrella like a quiet accusation, as if the sky itself was reminding him that grief never comes alone. He stood near the grave with soil still fresh and dark, holding his young daughter's small hand, while whispers moved through the crowd like cold wind, whispers that carried one cruel truth he had not prepared for: his own family had already chosen a side, and it was not his. At the center of that silent storm stood his ex-wife, her presence sharper than the grief itself, her eyes calm while his world cracked open at his father's funeral. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that reflect real pain and real hope, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to channel name so we can continue telling stories that touch the heart. He had never imagined that losing his father would also mean losing the last fragile thread holding his family together. As a single dad, his life had already been narrowed into long nights, early mornings, packed lunches, school drop-offs, and the constant ache of being both parents to a child who still asked why her mother was never around. His marriage had ended years earlier, not with a dramatic explosion, but with a slow erosion of trust, warmth, and shared purpose. His ex-wife had chosen freedom over responsibility, leaving behind promises she could not keep, while he stayed, building a quiet life around duty, patience, and love for his child. His father had been his anchor through it all, the one voice reminding him that doing the right thing rarely looks easy in the moment. Now that voice was gone. As the priest spoke words about legacy and remembrance, he felt eyes on him that were no longer sympathetic. His uncles, aunts, even cousins stood closer to his ex-wife than to him, their faces stiff with judgment shaped by rumors he never had the chance to correct. In the months before the funeral, his ex-wife had returned unexpectedly, not to reconcile with him, but to reconnect with the family he had once introduced her to. She spoke softly, cried easily, and painted herself as a woman pushed away, misunderstood, and wronged. Grief made people vulnerable, and she used it like a key, unlocking sympathy while quietly locking him out. The funeral ended, but the real burial happened afterward, when the family gathered under a tent for food and prayers. He stood alone with his daughter, watching plates pass by without reaching them, listening as conversation stopped when he stepped closer. His ex-wife moved comfortably among them, her hand resting on his mother's shoulder, offering comfort that felt rehearsed. When his daughter tugged his sleeve asking why grandma would not look at them, he had no answer that would not break something inside her. That moment carved itself into his memory, sharper than the sound of earth hitting the coffin. The days after the funeral were heavier than the day itself. Phone calls stopped. Invitations disappeared. His mother, drowning in her own grief, became distant, influenced by relatives who insisted that he had driven his ex-wife away, that his seriousness and struggles had suffocated her spirit. Alone at night, after his daughter slept, he replayed memories of his father sitting at the small kitchen table, telling him that truth has weight, and time reveals it slowly but surely. Holding on to those words became his only comfort. Life did not pause for his grief. Bills arrived. Work demanded focus he no longer had. His daughter needed stability even as his own foundation shook. He packed lunches with trembling hands, smiled at school gates while his chest felt hollow, and prayed silently during long drives that he would not collapse under the pressure. His ex-wife, meanwhile, began visiting the family home more often, speaking of reconciliation with the family, of shared mourning, of old bonds renewed. Each visit felt like another door closing behind him. What no one saw were the quiet sacrifices he made. He sold his father's old watch to cover school fees. He skipped meals so his daughter could have her favorite snacks. He worked overtime at night, returning home exhausted but still reading bedtime stories with a steady voice. His grief did not make him dramatic, it made him invisible. And invisibility hurt more than anger ever could. Months passed, and the truth began to strain against the lies holding it down. His ex-wife's patterns resurfaced. She borrowed money she did not repay. She missed promised visits. Her stories changed slightly each time they were told. Small doubts crept into the family's certainty, especially when his daughter innocently mentioned nights when her father cried quietly after she fell asleep, or mornings when he fixed her uniform even with swollen eyes. Children speak without strategy, and her words planted seeds no one expected. The turning point came quietly, without confrontation or shouting. His mother found an old box in the garage filled with letters his father had written but never sent, letters about pride in his son, about disappointment in how the family judged too quickly, about concern that charm often hides selfishness. Reading those words was like hearing her husband speak again, firm and clear. For the first time since the funeral, she looked at her son not through grief or gossip, but through memory. Slowly, the family's distance softened into hesitation, then into regret. Apologies came in fragments, awkward and late. Invitations returned, cautious and unsure. He did not rush to embrace them, not out of bitterness, but because healing required honesty, not performance. He allowed them back into his life the same way he lived it, carefully, thoughtfully, and always with his daughter's well-being first. The final shift came on a quiet afternoon when his ex-wife failed to show up for a family gathering she had insisted on hosting. No calls. No messages. Just absence. In that silence, the contrast became undeniable. One parent stayed no matter the cost. The other appeared only when it benefited her image. The family finally saw what he had lived every day. At his father's grave 1 year later, the rain returned, softer this time. He stood not alone but surrounded by family who now understood the weight he had carried. His daughter placed flowers carefully on the stone, smiling up at him with the same trust she always had. In that moment, he felt something close to peace. Not because he was proven right, but because he had stayed true when it would have been easier to give up. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who might need hope, and subscribe to channel name so more stories like this can reach those who feel unseen. Before this story ends, we have one special request for you. Please comment below with a single word that represents what you felt while listening, because your words help others feel less alone. He learned that day that being turned on does not mean being defeated, and standing alone does not mean standing wrong. Sometimes the strongest love is the quiet kind, the kind that keeps showing up even when no one is watching, the kind his father had taught him, and the kind he now passed on to his child, ensuring that even in loss, something unbreakable remained.